You know, if there's one question I get asked more than any other, more even than do you prefer smooth or crunchy peanut butter, that question would have to be, Mark, is Nikon's 135mm f2.8 AIS lens the best bargain among their telephoto primes? Or does its low price keep good image quality just out of your grasp despite that 135mm reach? Well, today we're going to try and answer that question. Let's talk about 135mm lenses. No, not that one. Who do you think I am? Let's lower our expectations and our budget down to the bottom tier of the eBay price categories, deep into the dark corners where scratched and moldy dust bunnies blink out at you in the reflection of your sputtering torch. Yes, there isn't much love for old 135mm lenses anymore, and I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's just that bit too long for portrait, that bit too short for wildlife. You won't be able to fit your fat auntie into the family group photo, but you also won't be able to capture that fluffy back tit babbler in the distance. And let's face it, it's that medium telephoto range where a zoom lens really does have a lot to offer. For those times when you can't zoom with your feet, or you're just too lazy to walk closer or further back, having a zoom lens is just, well, practical. In fact, I wouldn't ever take a prime telephoto to a sports match, but since I won't ever willingly be going to a sports match anyway, it's kind of a moot point. But it is easier to make a quality 135mm prime lens than a complex zoom. I say that with absolutely no knowledge of optical physics, lens design, or manufacturing, but I've heard it many times before, and even toilet wall scrawlings carry weight when they're read often enough. Well, the internet is the largest toilet wall in the world. So let's accept the common sense argument that since you're not trying to wrangle the complexities of the light fall off, distortion, and aberration that come with wide-angle lenses, you're more likely to get a decent result out of a moderate telephoto and a moderate cost than most other fixed focal length primes. This Nikon 135mm f2.8 AIS came out in 1981, but it's really part of a family of 135mm that's just incrementally improved things as they went along. The AIS has the same optical formula to the early AI model, but with improved coatings, as witnessed by the beautiful purple and green hues here. They made lots of these for amateurs and professionals alike, and I guess it's a testament to the popularity of the 135 that it remained in production for 24 years. Back in the 80s, this was a great option. Serious photographers wouldn't think of using a zoom. The quality just wasn't there. More than that, those zooms were, and usually still are, a lot slower, bigger, and heavier. I mean, let's compare two 135mm lenses. This Nikon 135 and the 70-210 zoom. They'll both get you there, but with a variable aperture of f4.5 to 5.6 and weighing in at a lot heavier, lugging this around may help with building your biceps as you take it on your photographic adventures, but it's not the most elegant way of flexing your photographic prowess. This was the internal narrative I was constructing when I was experiencing a particularly bad case of gear acquisition syndrome. I was in Japan and decided that rather than take the risk with the Japanese eBay merchants with reliable service and many excellent plus condition lenses, please check photo, I figured I'd go to the source and check them out myself before plonking down my hard-earned yen on a new piece of old glass. Well, 17,000 yen wasn't the cheapest, but I'm pleased to say that despite Lemon Camera's refreshingly honest assessment, this B-grade lens is as smooth as silk and free from those tiny dust particles, multiple small scratches, and spots of fungus that of course will not affect image found on the usual near mint plus eBay offerings. So it was in my hands and I had to try it out, and where better to test out a telephoto lens than one of the world's most busy and crowded locations, Shibuya, Tokyo. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, 135mm on the crowded Tokyo streets is a challenge. There was a part of me that just wanted to swap it out for a 35mm at times, but there is something a bit special about this longer focal length. It allows you to pick out details and obtain candid portraits, all in a compact form factor and with a wide aperture to boot. Let's look at it a bit more closely. Checking out that sexy cylinder, and you'll see that it has all of the trademarks of Nikon's manual era build quality, where plastic was used sparingly and the mechanics were built to precise tolerances. It might not be as tough as its forebears, but you could still do some serious trauma to your toes when you drop this fella on your foot. It is a bit heavy at 425 grams, but not excessively so. It'll balance quite nicely on all my SLRs, and that small size makes it look really discreet compared to most other lenses of this focal length. With a focus throw of 180 degrees, it's a great Goldilocks zone that allows you to precisely set your focus point without feeling that you're racking the barrel around with multiple turns. And that collar around the outside is a retractable lens hood. And since I never remember to bring a lens hood, it's nice to have that flare resistance without having to think. I think these are the main reasons that I found myself using it more than I intended to while out in the streets of Tokyo. It never really seemed to draw attention to itself. You saw how that f2.8 allowed me to get the shots I needed in low light. I found myself bringing it with me when I went out shopping or to get dinner, just to capture the fleeting moments of the night streets at a respectable distance. During the day, it was a great tool for picking out little scenes and individual people and moments. I'm not saying every photo was a keeper. Even in some of my best shots, I found myself struggling with depth of field. It's hard to get a lot in focus with a lens this long, and I felt at times I had to settle for one distance, knowing that the rest would just not be as sharp. Of course, the flip side is that the wide aperture and long focal length allow you to isolate your subject and wrap them in a soft pillow of creamy bokeh. So yes, I felt like my time in Japan was to a large extent experienced at arm's length through the comfortable distance of 135mm, my perspective mirroring my generally antisocial predisposition. And well, what about that image quality? Well, you've probably already formed your own conclusions based upon its video and still performance when adapted to the digital Z6. But when this lens came out, digits meant fingers, and going to the doctor for a digital examination, well, it usually came with the snapping of latex gloves, with an end result a bit messier than a pixelated image. I didn't have a compatible analog camera with me while in Japan, but I wanted to give it an authentic test, and the best way to do that was with film, specifically a roll of Kentmere 100 loaded into my Nikon FE and a January summer visit to Hillary's Boat Harbour in Perth, Western Australia. From digital to film, Tokyo nights to Perth summer days. I don't know about you, but to my mind, the Nikon 135mm f2.8 IAS handled them all with aplomb. I'm glad the summer afforded me the chance to use 100 ISO film because it really did showcase the sharpness of this lens. Now, I'm not going to get forensic here, maybe save that for when I have another 135mm to compare it to, but I reckon most of you would agree that it was sharp enough. The summer sun let me shoot at a reasonable shutter speed, and the coatings on the lens hood mitigated any issues with flare. As regards the other optical characteristics, well, vignetting is there, but only at the widest aperture. You won't really notice it after about f5.6. I haven't really seen any distortion, very little chromatic aberration. It's definitely there, but fixable, and maybe just a light touch of blooming in the highlights, though honestly, I can't really see much of that there either, even on a cheap film like Kentmere. You'll read reviews that try to rank Nikon's moderate telephotos, and this 135mm f2.8 doesn't usually make it to the top of the list. The 105mm f2.5 is the one that gets lauded as the god tier lens. Yes, it's smaller than the 135mm, but it's at least twice the price, and it doesn't have the reach for almost the same aperture. 135mm is going to squeeze that little bit more compression and a little bit more bokeh, and as you've seen, the quality of the outer focus areas are divine. But there is no one god, and maybe there's room for a whole pantheon of praiseworthy optics, because here's the big secret about 135mm lenses. Fast manual focus medium telephoto lenses from the film era produced by the main manufacturers are almost all uniformly great. I'm lauding the AIS version of the 135mm, but if you see an earlier version, it may not quite have the same contrast or biting incisiveness of the later ones, but I bet it'll be sharp enough and bring bags of character with it. So, let's pick some telephoto bangers and be as ecumenical in our attitude to film and digital as we are to our favourite flavours of this focal length. 3 Tokyo night shots and 3 black and white film pics to add salt and pepper to the digital ketchup. And yeah, my tendency to lean into lines and angles is on full display here. People are more interesting than things, and there were definitely a few more human-focused photos on the shortlist, but the physical and emotional distance you get from a 135 does also create a kind of objectification that's a bit cold and analytical. So hey, let's just turn our icy gaze onto the artificial world instead. Let me know if you agree, or maybe I just missed the mark here. Comment down below, and if you do like this kind of content, well, I'm so sorry for you, but you may as well at least like and subscribe, because it's lenses like this that keep me wanting to share my photographic journey with you, and I promise there'll be more to come in the future to feed your own strange proclivities. Suffice it to say, the Nikon 135mm f2.8 AIS lens is becoming one of my favourite lenses, both for its superb image quality, but also, honestly, its price. It is the peanut butter lens, smooth and buttery bokeh, but with enough crunch when in focus to leave an indelible impression, or at the very least, a nutty photographic nugget stuck in your teeth. It's possibly Nikon's second best value lens. As for the first, well, there are a couple of contenders, and I haven't quite made up my mind yet, but I promise at some point we'll come back and pore over the possibilities together as I try to find that magic optic to elevate my images from photographic mediocrity. Later.